Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Township Board's business meeting for March 27th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Here it is.
Of course.
Right? Yep.
Right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, bro.
everybody. Welcome to spring. All we need is the warmer weather. All right, let's start with additions, deletions. Joe, do you have something?
Yes, if we could, I'm not sure how you want to do this, but if we could just change the action item number 6 to the consent agenda, can we do that? Or
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
And just what is the action? What is the item?
The animal shelter had damage done.
Just
Oh.
what is it about?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just the award bid for the animal shelter emergency roof replacement.
Okay. We have a motion to add as consent agenda number 7.
Support?
Okay, very good. And Joe, just give us a little background since it's going in consent.
During the last high windstorm, what happened is one of the large trees there split, and the large limb actually went right through the roof of the animal shelter. So they did get bids for it, and it seemed to be very reasonable. This time, it was nearly half of what the other bids were, and it is budgeted. So they needed, obviously this is an emergency. We need to get this done right away so they can continue business.
Very good. All right, any questions or discussion about adding that? Seeing none, we have a motion to add as consent agenda number 7, award bid for animal shelter emergency roof replacement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that will be added as consent agenda number 7. Thank you. Any other additions or deletions? Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion. I'll move to approve the agenda as amended. Support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an amended agenda. Very good. And not have any presentation today. So we will move to public comment on agenda items.
Just real quick, this is consent number 7, right?
Consent
I just want to
numbers,
make sure.
yes, consent number 7.
1, 4.
Is this public comment for agenda items or
Yes.
for
Yes.
our other public comment?
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Jenna Moxlow, 9415 Lakewood. I'm aware that Mr. Debussy hasn't had the opportunity to speak yet at this time that this is being read, so I won't steal his thunder on the topic of the Centennial Farm operating agreement, other than to say that based on what he has shared with the community via Facebook earlier today, I am in full agreement with his reservations about approving this action item tonight. I hope that you all will hear him out, not only as a board member, but as an integral part of a wildly successful multi-generational farm here on the island. He certainly has the experience, forethought, and knowledge on his side to speak to what is involved in maintaining a Centennial Farm, and I hope you all take that to heart. Kyle, I want to thank you in advance for your insight on this tonight, but I also want to thank you for always reaching out to the public to keep us informed, to encourage citizens to get involved, and to keep our best interests in mind. Thank you all. And it looks like that's the only one for agenda items.
Okay, thank you, Elena. No, Brian didn't change. He is out of town. Elena Farmer is sitting in for him. She will be doing his duties today. Thanks, Elena. All right. Any other public comment? Yes, sir. Mr. Flavin.
Kevin Flavin, Park Lane. My main question is the fee schedule update. There was no dialogue or verbiage along with that, and I wondered if that would be explained and what the increases in costs will be and the changes that are going to take place because of the new fee schedule.
Well, when that action item does come up, Ross Guerrero, Community Development Director, will address that particular question. Kathy? Jim?
Just a second. Hang on. Okay. Yeah, that will be discussed. That is in the action items. I thought it was in consent, but yeah.
It's number 2.
Yeah, again, something that hadn't been done before. The fees were actually for some reason, we're stuck in procedures rather than where it should be just a schedule that's voted on every year, if whether it changes or not, just to look at them and have some discussion on them. So I moved that into this format so that we would have something. And yes, the fees have changed, and there will be discussion on those changes. Kathy?
Kathy Walker, 26051 Thorpe Court. About the fees, I called on them today, and I was told, and again, Lori wasn't here, that it was just the, like the electrician fees, the 3-year fees that they pay, and they hadn't been changed in about 15 years. She said they're $15 to $35, and everybody's going to be $35. These are the people who do the work, and they have to up it every year, or every 3 years.
That is actually separate from the fee schedule.
That's what I figured out, because I said, when I saw that, I said, this makes no sense. So this fee schedule, do you have like percentages of increase in when you're going to present? Like last year it was this number, this year it's this number, it's up 10%, 25%.
I think they probably have dollar amounts like from $25 to $35,
But
things
do you have
like
an
that.
overall, like what you're forecasting?
I do not. We'll see what our director has. He's the one that took care of it.
All right, Director. We'll see about that. And secondly, as far as the horse farm, I understand how you can write a contract and omit things and put things in and all that, but why are we paying and not doing, at least sharing these big improvements like leasehold, and call them leasehold improvements, and having Luton pick it up? I mean, for the little amount we're getting, it kind of reminds me of Smokies. I mean, remember you started at 47.5, and now you're down in the 30s. It seems like we're not getting our piece of the pie, and it'd be nice to know what he's making, or a general idea, and how it compares to what we're getting and what he's going to pick up. Like if they have to do a roof, are we paying the roof, or is he going to put in for leasehold improvements? Things have to be shared when they're making money on us. And this is for a small population. I'm not saying it's not an important population, because I still believe in a swimming pool. But it's something that I really think, you guys got to be a little tougher on these people. I know you want somebody there, but sometimes it'd be cheaper to have that place empty than what we're doing for them. That fence was a lot of money. And I'd like to see an analysis, a detailed analysis on how this is going to make us money. I don't think it is. I think we'll probably lose money on it. But it'd be nice to know that they had a little bit of skin in the game with leasehold improvements. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Anyone else? Are you just waving at me, Bill, or do you want to come up? Do you want to come up? Okay, come on up. I wasn't sure with you. You were sitting there.
If you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have done that. Bill Heil, I live on East River Road. I'm concerned that, to a degree, it appears with the dollars coming to us from the horse farm and, in fact, from other activities, but the horse farm's out there tonight, that we subsidize so that the taxpayers help a smaller number of people enjoy something that they're not fully paying for, or at least we're not getting fully paid back. When I see other things on our budget that seem to be crowding us and giving us concern for the future, I'm talking about infrastructure and things like that, it seems that having this position on these things isn't a correct thing to do. And I think with the long-range plan that you could put in place, if you put some effort to it, you might see some of these things. And I would encourage you, should you discover them, that the proper adjustments were made so that we were going in the right place at the right time for everybody.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Is anyone back there? I can't even see, you know,
Not back there.
just Bill. Bob?
Bill Stevenson, and there's one person.
So nobody behind street where I can't see?
No.
Okay. Your sound?
Working on it. Bob Z. Blauvelt. First of all, on the fees, action item number 2, sounds like we're going to get possibly a detailed presentation, which would be great. But again, I guess to summarize, if we had a figure in terms of, there were review fees in there, $100 per thousand costs, so on and so forth. If somebody could just give us a figure in terms of dollars or a percentage of how much it's going up to where it is today, that would at least give us an idea where we're at. Other action item number 5, Centennial Farms you're going to vote on tonight. Quickly looking at the $1,900 a month, $23,000 a year, $115,000 over the 5-year contract. We've already got, I think, 150, 170, whatever, into a fence. I haven't seen a 5-year plan. I haven't seen a maintenance program on that property. What we project the cost to be in the next 5 years, for example, roofs, building costs, utilities. We could be looking at another $60,000. That's going to push us up to $250,000. Now I realize this is a service, but it's still a business venture. We've got money supplement from the cell towers of approximately $60,000. Something to take into consideration. If that goes away, where are we going to go? To the general fund? Wouldn't be fair. Also, when you vote on this tonight for 5 years, you're going to pick up 1 year. The next board's going to pick up 4. I think you want to leave the next board in a position to address a defined, well-outlined cost program so that they don't have to possibly deal with last-minute factors in terms of money. In terms of an option, maybe you might want to look at the time period. Timing is everything in a plan. Maybe you look at 1 year. That would give you time to go back, look at it, do a good business plan, look at your cost factors for maintenance, etc. What this is really going to cost you over the next 5 years before you lock yourselves into a 5-year contract. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Anyone else? I see none. We'll end the public comment and we'll move to the consent agenda. David?
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda 22-081, which consists of minutes of the March 13th regular meeting of the board, check registers dated through March 17th, 2023, committee and commission chairpersons for fiscal year 2023 to 2024, approval to process and distribute payments through April 7th, 2023, a Public Services Commission appointment, and reappointment of committee members for terms starting fiscal year 2023 to 2024. And to award a bid for animal shelter emergency roof replacement.
Support. Any comment on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve consent agenda 22-081, which consists of the minutes of the March 13th, 2023 regular meeting, the check register dated through March 17th, 2023, commission chairpersons for fiscal year 2023-2024, approval to process and distribute payments through April 7th, 2023, a public service commission appointment, reappointment of the committee members for terms starting fiscal year 2023-2024, and an award bid for animal shelter emergency roof replacement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Our consent agenda passes. Thank you for that. I will say regarding committee members, unfortunately, are through a number of the committees and commissions, some of the attendance has been abysmal, and we will be asking some members to resign because they can't make the meetings, or if they're on the borderline, we're going to ask them to step it up and start coming to the meetings, and we'll be watching it, because as nice as it is to be and we appreciate people being on commissions and committees, if you don't show up to the meetings, you're not doing anything for anybody. We have some commissions that can't hold meetings because they can never they have a very hard time getting a quorum, so they can't pass any business. That doesn't do the township any good. It doesn't do the commission any good. So we are looking at that, and we will be dealing with it in the near future.
Well said.
Thank you, sir. All right. So moving on to our action items. David, I believe you have the first one.
Thank you. Based upon a recommendation from the Groseal Airport Commerce Park Commission and the Groseal Airport Manager, the Township of Groseal hereby recommends Anglin Civil LLC for the upcoming Taxiway A East pavement and lighting reconstruction project number B2600253521, job number 125528CON and 129346CON. The base bid with bid add-on 1 in a total amount of $5,036,367.50. And this award is contingent upon Federal Aviation Administration funding and approval.
500,000? Can I borrow yours? Because I have an old copy. They rearranged that. Okay. Does anybody want to support that?
Support.
Discussion?
This is the total reconstruction of Taxiway East at the airport. It's a over $5 million project. The financial impact to the Groseal Airport is $15,118. The rest of the project is being picked up by the FAA and the state of Michigan. We received 3 bids on this project. Anglin Civil was the lowest bidder, and their bid was reviewed by CNS engineers, and they recommended that we accept this award.
And this is for the taxiway.
This is for the taxiway.
Yes, Uda.
Well, I just want to say, in light of some of the comments that were made a bit earlier about Centennial Farm and in the past about other projects here at the township, especially regarding the airport, it's another part of our township assets, you can say, but it's also sometimes a part of the township's liability. We run an airport here, an airfield here for the township. And even though there aren't many residents on the island that use this airport, it's not a vibrant flight hub for jet setters or anything like that. We do have an obligation to maintain the airfield as a municipal airport if we want to be able to keep this land the way it is. And we've had this conversation at previous boards about what are the options if we don't maintain the airport. And those are things that nobody in the community or on the board wanted to pursue. So we, even though a lot of this money is through a federal and state grant, it still is tax dollars at work. And we're lucky to be getting those to maintain this airfield for our township, even though a relatively tiny number of us ever literally use the facility. So it's important that we maintain it, that it stays useful, that people can still land and taxi and use the airfield safely, and we have to commit to doing that in the future if we want to keep it as an airfield. And on future Jeopardy questions, for instance, that people know where Groseal is because we have an airport. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, the airport's interesting because FAA has so much to do with telling us what we have to do with it. And they'll come in and tell us, well, okay, this is wrong, you got to fix it. But then they're also the ones that end up picking up most of the bills, so that's nice. Other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion based upon the recommendation of the Groseal Airport Commerce Commission and Groseal Airport Manager that the Township of Groseal hereby recommends Anglin Civil LLC for the upcoming Taxiway A Taxiway A East pavement and lighting reconstruction, project number B 2600253521, job number 125528. CON and 129346 CO. Is that, David, is that CO or CN? It's CO.
It should be CON.
It should be CON. Okay, CON. The base bid with bid add-on 1 in the amount of $5,036,367.50. The award is contingent upon Federal Aviation Administration funding and approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You get your taxiway, David.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. No, go ahead. I'll get that.
Well, you want to put your note under?
Yeah. Okay. All right. David, action item number 2.
Okay. I'm gonna take this as I can.
Guess we gotta make a motion.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that the Township Board approve community development fee schedule for fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
Support. Get Ross up here and can explain what we're doing here. Ross.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Just a little background about what the fee schedule is. It basically helps support and fund the community development department. It helps pay for my salary, Lori's salary, Brittany's, and our inspectors. Helps us pay for our township planner and code enforcement, Julie, and as well as engineering fees as well. And the increases on this fee schedule proposed in front of you it's been 13 years since we have sort of analyzed our fees. And so the past 2 months I've been working with Brittany and Lori on what makes sense to increase, what fees to increase, and how much to increase them by. You'll find that a lot of them are just adjust for inflation compared from 2010 to now. And we also compared, once we had made our adjustments, we then compared to 4 communities, 4 neighboring communities, and 3 similar communities of Groseal's size. So, and we'll continually make adjustments, like Supervisor Budney had mentioned, on an annual basis to make sure that we are on par with other communities or for what makes sense for Groseal. So I guess to kind of go through it briefly, you'll find that our application fees are adjusted for inflation. And with that adjustment, so in 2010, they were $25 and now they're $35. And even then, we are lower than most communities. I felt that, and we felt that as a department, that raising it up to what other communities ask for application fees, which is typically around $50, 100% adjustment for contractors or those pulling permits just didn't really make sense to us. And you'll see that our inspection fees have increased from $35 to $50, and that's to help cover the costs of our inspectors. And that's the next action item, I believe. Just to touch up on that, David and Charles, our inspectors, have not seen a raise in 23 years from their original rate and $35 per inspection in 2000. Tim received a pay increase in 2015 to $35 when it was originally $25 in 2006.
And Tim is the building inspector.
Yes, Tim is the building inspector. Chuck and Charles are our mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. And adjusting these rates just makes us competitive in the market compared with other communities as well. So, and then going through, our planner review fees have increased, and this is mostly due to the fact that just this year we received a 7.5% increase from Safe Built for the services of the township planner. The last time we received an increase was in 2016. So it's kind of, so you'll see some review fees increase here, and that's to reflect that. And we changed flat rate fees for cost of construction for patios, decks, porches, pools, etc. And that's because you'll see here at our old fee schedule, which I did not put in front of you guys, and so I apologize for that. But our current fee schedule for fence review, let's just say, is $100. Sometimes it costs more for the department to actually review certain plans or certain fees. So when we ask for $100, when really we're spending more time, what it actually costs to run the department to do those things. So we felt it made sense to change the rate to cost of construction for those larger projects that take more time to help cover our time to review those. And we did not increase the rate of cost of construction. So in our in our 2010 fee schedule, the rate is $18 per $1,000 of cost of construction. We kept that rate. We felt that, that's still on par with what a lot of communities are doing, and it makes sense for Groseal as well.
So you kept the same and just added it to the application? fee?
Yeah,
I mean,
we-
if as necessary?
Yes, yes. And for performance bonds, the old fee schedule was kind of confusing. So it said miscellaneous construction. It was per rate, per cost of construction. We just kind of said all construction. We will have a, here, let me see here. Well, we basically just made it more simple on Lori and Brittany to kind of do the math, and it made it easier for the applicant as well. So, and we did not change the rate for individual items listed on the electrical, mechanical, and plumbing permits because we are at the same rate as other communities. So, when electrical contractors or someone pulling a permit for an electrical permit, those costs will be the same to them. It's just the application fee that increased and the inspection fees. So,
Hey, I have a question, Ross.
yeah,
So regarding the zoning board, so $35 application fee, and then a hearing is actually here with the township staff, right? The
Yes.
special hearing is with the zoning board of appeals.
Mhm.
So by the time someone gets to the zoning board of appeals, they're already 1,500 in the hole to the township on maybe a $2,000 deck because they have a non-conforming structure.
correct.
That's pretty cost prohibitive.
Yeah, you'll find these rates it's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of getting everyone here in the boardroom, and the cost of the planner reviewing documents, the department reviewing site plans. It's it could be 5-6 hours review, preparing presentations for the ZBA. Those costs are up there, but it's the cost of doing business, and you'll find that in other communities. It's pretty comparable. So,
Well, so why do we need to charge them $650 for a special hearing? Like, I get the escrow fee for the planner starting at $750, right?
sir, what are you looking at here?
So if we look at page
57.
6.
Okay,
Yeah,
6 at the
57
top,
in
yep.
the packet.
Yep.
Zoning Board of Appeals. So I want to make my deck bigger, but my house was built in 42, so I've got a non-conforming structure right out the gate, right? So I got to pay a $35 application fee,
Right.
a $750 fee for safe home, then a $270 fee so I can come in and meet with you and Lori.
Right.
And then we determined, yep, or my structure is non-conforming, I do need to go to ZBA, and then I have to pay a $650 fee. What is that $650 fee paying for? Because we've paid for the planner, we've paid for the building department's time.
Right.
We just got another fee on there?
I think it's all the hours that were not, so the hours counting up and leading up to, and for the session of the ZBA, for our personnel to go there after hours.
That $750 is an escrow fee, so it's
Right,
not
so that's for the
necessarily
planner.
that it's going to cost them they put aside $750.
Right.
I would think that's the better portion of the $650 is the ZBA hearing for
Right.
the planner.
Right.
And that would come out of that escrow fee, so he's not paying it again.
The planner, and then I think ZBA members and planning commission members get paid for each meeting they go to as
They
well.
do.
Well, $12.
Well, this says escrow fees for the planner start at $750 in the
Right.
paragraph above.
It
So-
says escrow fee.
Right, and then it says down here $650 plus escrow fees. So they're being charged an escrow fee plus $650 to come to a ZBA hearing.
Is that,
Yep.
is it another $650?
Right,
The
but-
the $750 is an escrow fee, which means you may get some back.
Right.
Sure,
You
and
could-
that's
yeah,
fair,
yeah,
right?
right,
I mean, we gotta
that's
pay
fine.
the planner.
So yeah, but the $650 for the hearing, so for the employees to prepare, prepare documents, to review, make sure that everything is prepared for that meeting, and to review the plans and the site plans and make sure that we have the case, we have everything set out for that meeting, and that we have correctly reviewed our ordinances, gone through the correct procedures, done our due diligence. That's quite a lot of time for something to go to ZBA. We really do a lot of work to make sure that we have everything correct.
And that only accounts for maybe $90 of that $650. The rest of that is the planner.
The planner has an escrow fee of $750 on top of the $650.
For his work building up to the report he writes and being at the ZBA meeting.
Right. But
that should be part of the escrow.
Well, then the escrow goes up to $1,000.
So I think, I'm willing to.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's a lot of money.
Well,
but that's what we have to pay to have him do it.
Well, the purpose of zoning is to have our community look a certain way, right? And to be safe and all that kind of stuff, right? But if you tell me, like, hey, listen, I want to add a foot to my deck, but I have to pay the township $1,500 to add a foot to my deck, I'm just going to add a foot to my deck. So I don't think this fee in its current structure is serving us on the, cheaper, smaller end of getting people to comply with zoning. So I think in the future, and obviously not tonight, but I think it would be worth considering some kind of graduated rate or something we can do for people that maybe have a small project that, okay, listen, like we can give you this fee,
You're right. You're what you just said. You have somebody. I'm hoping what we're going to do is we're going to keep the planner out of it. I mean, for something like that, first of all, our let's say they come in, they say, I want to add a foot to my deck. You got non-conforming. You got to go to ZBA. We don't have any way around that. But do we have to have the planner involved and add $1,000+ to this?
I mean, I've never had the planner.
You'll find that there's sometimes where the department does a lot of the legwork, and the planner will prepare like the professional documents and make his legal recommendations based on it. So he would only be charged like an hour. So out of that $750, but we will do a lot of the legwork for that $650 is represented. Like we are doing that.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying without some kind of graduated mechanism, people are going to look at this and be like, yeah, I'm not going up to Township Hall to get a permit for this.
I totally agree. Yeah, you'll find that how structuring a fee schedule is very complicated, and when you look at how everyone does it drastically different. So this first phase that we're doing is just to kind of bring us up to par, and then eventually work on things like what you've mentioned, where we add gradual steps to the process. That's what we were kind of doing with the cost of construction, for instance, or if there's a 2-foot variance, how do we address that? How do we make that more equitable for the community?
Yeah, I'm willing to move on. I guess I'll loop back around with you and the board about maybe something we can come up with down the road.
Yeah, definitely.
In fact, because of that, because you're absolutely right. What we don't want is people going, that's more than my project.
Right.
So I'm going to do my project. I'm not going to you guys. Catch me.
Yep.
And then it's going to be, since I did it once, I'm going to add 3 feet.
Right.
Same thing. So think about adding something to this fee schedule that adjusts for that, based on that we can put into this fee schedule, right? I mean, the one that we're going to vote on. But to address that now, not a year from now, I'd like it to come back that we're taking this fee schedule and we've added whatever verbiage it is to adjust for those situations. Because we don't want to be driving people into doing it behind our backs. We want them coming to us so it's good.
Gotcha.
And you're building a $2 million house. These fees are just part of the game. You're adding onto your deck a foot.
Right.
It could become prohibitive. We don't want. We need something in here to address the prohibitive.
Yep, I fully
right?
agree. Yep.
Is that sound good
Yeah, I
to
think
everybody?
That sounds good to me.
Yep. Yeah, I figured. So, again, yeah, this is the first time we've gone through this process in 13 years,
Right.
and that our department was just working off of what was previously approved by the board in 2010. So we felt, okay, if we just kind of adjust things. But so yeah, I appreciate the
And,
feedback.
yeah, by going up and getting to current, we didn't run into this before because the fees were so small, even Ross could afford. But, now we've adjusted and there's nothing wrong with being current and getting paid because again, we need to cover our costs, right?
Yep.
Or know that we're not. And this could cause, because we have a number of small projects around the island that people do, and we don't want to push them away from coming to us.
Yep. Fully agree.
Just one question, since we're talking about costs, so I get an understanding of this. The planner is obviously a consultant.
Yes.
Or has a consultant status. What does the planner charge us an hour?
155. It's increased to 155.
Okay, so at 155, does he have a sliding scale, or is it 155 per hour for whatever he does for us?
155 per hour for whatever he does.
Thanks.
Yep.
And we could maybe talk to him too about this type of situation.
Yep. Yeah. And I've consulted with him on this too. With, how does he feel about these numbers? And he works in countless communities, so he's kind of aware of, what rates are going on in other communities. And he, got his approval. And so, but.
Go ahead.
But I just think it's important to reiterate too that your department, community development, is fee-based. It's fee-dependent. So everything that you do in your department is paid for by these fees. So on that level, it's important to justify to the public, one, that we need to be able to cover our costs on these activities. I applaud you for bringing this forward into 2023. I think we're playing a lot of catch up on a lot of levels here, but I think I'd like to find out where I could get a deck for $2,000, but I agree that some sort of a sliding or prorated approach for the smaller projects, because again, it is easy for residents. A lot of residents, for instance, when I first moved here, I didn't know you needed a permit to put in a dishwasher. You needed a plumbing permit. I only found out because Lorinda came over and she says, well, wait a minute, there wasn't a dishwasher here before. Yeah. So, and we've made steps to make sure that people understand, all the different levels that they need permits for. But you don't want them to be prohibitive so that then people start doing it behind our backs.
Other comments?
We need to amend this.
Well, I was going
or-
to ask to make a friendly amendment to our action item to include not only approving the fees, but that we would add language. How would we say it? Language to be able to adjust the fees according to the overall cost of the project. Because your fees, yeah. Yeah,
No hiding.
Sorry.
You're going to be up here. You're going to be up here a long
That's
time
fine,
for the
that's
next
fine.
one.
I'll hang out all night.
Your fees should be certainly a single-digit percentage of that project. They should be double-digit costs or half the cost or something like that.
Right.
So we want to do that. So.
Elena, did you get that? Okay. And we'll replay and replay
Right.
and replay
Yeah.
till we get it right.
So, what I'd like to see is you work out that language and bring it back to the board
Okay.
with the language in it, and we'll approve the fee schedule, but we'll vote on this now.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I think we need to give him a basis to start with
Right,
you know,
right, and
right
this
away.
was, I mean,
Yeah.
our, like I said, the fee schedule for whatever reason was buried in, policies and procedures. And, people were going to policies and procedures for a lot of things. I don't think anybody was thinking of going to policies and procedures for a fee schedule. That just, why it was in there, I have no idea. It didn't belong in there. We took it out. We have it here. It'll be something that is brought forward to the board every year, with any changes that might be made.
One last question. If we approve this tonight, when would they take effect?
Did you have an effective date in this? April? Yeah, well, then I'd like to see, actually, for our April 10th meeting, I'd like to see, because, that verbiage shouldn't be that hard to come up with. All right, so, without any other discussion, we have a motion with a friendly, do we need to vote on that friendly amendment?
I don't, let's play it
just vote
safe
on the fee
and
schedule
vote
as
on the friendly
amended.
amendment.
Support friendly amendment?
All in favor of the friendly
Aye.
amendment?
Aye.
When in doubt, vote.
Yep, that's a good way to cover.
I've not heard anyone come up to the board to complain that we vote too much.
All right, so we have a motion before us to approve the Community Development's 2023-2024 fee schedule with language to be coming before us to give the ability to adjust fees according to the cost of the job. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have that. We'll see you back here in April. Thanks, Ross. All right. David again.
I'd like to make a motion to approve revised agreements with our building, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical inspector.
Support.
And I'll let Ross come up and, although you mentioned it.
Yeah, just go over briefly what we're doing here.
Yeah, I had briefly mentioned this. Dave, Chuck, and Tim. Well, Dave and Chuck haven't received a rate increase in 23 years. I think that this increased rate to $45 per inspection is right on par with other communities. You'll find that $50 per inspection is right up there. And Tim as well would be $45 per inspection. So across the board, $45 for all inspectors for their inspection rates. That's pretty much all I got. And these rates are based upon the approved budget. So these adjustments are based on the budgets that were approved. So
What is the $100? Yeah, this, and let me, that's not because I don't believe it's in each one of them. This is, Tim Thompson, it'd be the building inspector, in there, in his compensation.
It's in David's too.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
And it applies to wherever it is.
Yeah.
Besides the bump in their rate,
yep.
that you have provided, services provider in the agreement in the amount of $100 per new house, $100 per remodel, $100 per commercial plan. What is that covering?
That's the review. That's the for them
That's
to
the
rev-
actual review of
yeah.
the
That's for them
plan
to review.
involved
Yep, and
by
to
the inspector.
yep to review and make sure that they're conforming with the zoning ordinances and the building codes by the state of Michigan. So.
All right. And I would only add, all of the board members received new contracts at the meeting tonight versus what they had pulled off previously. We had to make a change in number 5, termination. The last sentence referred to a section that isn't in the contract. I think it was a typo or an error that it might have been in the previous contract, and they just took that section and it missed that whole sentence upon such termination referring to materials described in section 7B no longer exists. So it's just a removal of that sentence. That's the only change from what you may have downloaded.
So just so I understand, in David Rutkowski's contract, it says contractor shall be paid by the township for services provided under this agreement the amount of $100 per month plus $45 per inspection. So he has like $100 per month salary and then $45 per inspection?
So yeah, the $45 per inspection, and from my understanding, because the electrical inspector, he isn't reviewing large scale plans. He's just kind of going in there and utilizing, he's kind of on the fly, looking at code.
Was that in the previous?
That was.
So that hasn't changed.
That has not changed.
The $45 inspection fee is what changed.
Yes. Yep.
So they were giving them that anyway, so
Yep.
that isn't new.
That's not new.
But these other guys are being paid per structure, and he's just getting $100 a month?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's
Retainer, right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
And it is because his is different. The builder certainly gets the most inspections, or the building inspector gets the most inspections, and he's doing something different, reviewing plans where Dave's going in to look at, he's going in there after the fact, looking at, what you put up,
Yep.
tell you that you had a great electrical
Yep.
person or you didn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
I've gone through that with him.
Yep. Yep.
So that is the same. That isn't a change.
Right.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve the inspector agreements for our building inspector, mechanical, and plumbing inspector, and our electrical inspector. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you for that. Carl, are you?
I'm fine.
Wait, you can do it?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you.
I move that the Groseal Township Board authorize the transfer of ownership of property parcel number 003 03 0002 000 to the Groseal Open Space account at a price of $128,250 to be transferred from account number 245 101 971 000. It is an open space purchase account, to account number 1010 000 673000, general fund sales, and furthermore direct the township attorney to complete the deed modifications associated with the transfer and authorize the township manager to execute the necessary documents to complete the sale.
Second.
Background in this is that the township's December 12th, 2022 meeting included the proposed sale of a variety of township general fund parcels that were declared surplus and authorized for sale. Prior to listing the property, the Greenways Open Space Commission expressed an interest in purchasing the property for green space, open space use. Valuation placed upon the parcel in question
was done by Brooke McNee with MBA as a retainer of her services. Her recommendation was a price of $125,000 to $145,000. That analysis included the review of comparable properties currently on the market, recent sales of comparable parties, developmental costs, cost to bring utilities to the property that can affect the value, and current market conditions. I would indicate that the negotiations with the township supervisor, we looked at what the difference was between the two prices. One was $125,000 on the downside, $145,000 on the upside. We agreed to split that so that the difference would be $135,000. And because it was not going to be done as a sale pursuant to a real estate listing, the 5% commission would be saved. The township would receive the same net number, and Greenway's open space and the community as a whole would receive the benefit of that $135 less a 5% commission of $6,750, which gets us to the $128,250 price. It's not something that was pulled out of thin air, but using a formula based upon what the realtor had suggested would be fair market price, less the commission, hence $128,250.
Carl, I'm gonna correct you on one little item. When Brooke was looking at these, she put that 125 to 145. When we started talking about possibly selling this to open space, I said, okay, you don't put a piece of property up saying, hey, the price is 125 to 145. You need a price. Her price was 135. I didn't come up with it. We didn't bargain on that. It was Brooke who came up with that 135, and that's where we started from. Everything else was spot on.
The tough bargaining was with the township supervisor, though, who I still maintain is the cheapest man I have ever met. But it was good faith. Bill Stevenson was greatly involved in that. We met with both Jim Budney and Derek Thiel, and Bill is equally tough. And I want to thank Bill for his participation, Jim for your time on that, Derek if he were here for the amount of time and effort he put into it, and I think this is going to be a valuable addition to Open Space Greenways property. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions or comments?
Well, you might just say where the parcel is.
There's no address on it because it's undeveloped, but if you were northbound on Meridian Road and you cross Horsemill, you will find a half a dozen properties on your right-hand side, homes that have been developed, I believe 5 in total. You then have a parcel that is for sale. There is a realtor's sign on that. And then there are 2 parcels, or 1 parcel beyond that, which is what we're talking about, and then another parcel that's Greenway's open space. So it is just north of Horsemill and just a little bit south of Owen on the west side. So we're on the east side across from the condos.
You said west side, Carl?
The condos on the west side, Keith and Owen, it's across the street on the east side of Meridian from those condos.
Yeah, no, the
parcel's on the east side.
yeah.
Correct.
I got you. I'm
Correct.
sorry. I thought you said west
It's hard to
side.
describe without an address
Yeah.
or any kind of
Gotcha.
structure there.
I thought you said west side, and I thought I've been looking at east side the whole time.
No, we're only going to buy the one parcel, Joe. Thank
Not
you.
the condos? Okay.
Yeah,
All right, thanks.
we don't need to get into the condo business.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's adjacent to a lot of other open space right there too, right? Yeah.
That is correct. And with the drawing that everybody was provided, you'll see that the map shows various streets that have already been platted, including Livingstone, and I think Owen is in there. And those are undeveloped. You're not going to go back there because there is no access for vehicles, and there is a significant amount of other open space properties, parcels behind that, as well as conservancy and some private lots as well.
The sanctuary is in there, and like all our property, if you look at maps, you see, a lot of times you will see streets in open areas, and because of the way sales have gone and the development has gone, those are plotted but are never going to be built. Behind the wastewater treatment plant,
Right.
there's a lot of open land that has roads plotted for. I mean, shown on drawings, but it's never going to be developed just because of the development that is there today. So, and I would say what we looked at in agreeing to this was the fact that we had a ready buyer. It was we worked with the amount that our real estate agent said that it would go for. We had them there today. We didn't have to list it. We don't have to pay the commission. It was a 2-acre plot of land. Probably if someone were going in there, I mean, even if one guy was going to buy it and put his house up, all the infrastructure that has to be put in, very costly. So looking at all that and thinking about how long we may have to wait, that's why we came to the conclusion that this looked pretty good.
Yeah, I would just add that if you look at the plat, it's all basically 50-foot lots. They're no longer considered buildable. And I think for the past, I would say 20 years, there's been an effort between the township, the open space, and the Nature Conservancy. And in addition to people donating their land, to create this large area of untouched nature. I think in honor of Pam Frucci, we should note that at some point it was believed that the largest and oldest oak on the island was located in this area. So it's just been a long process to try to save this area, and it's a piece of the puzzle that fits.
And the privately owned, there's a number of privately owned lots in that area that are surrounded by either township, nature and land. I mean, it actually is an unbuildable area for them, but they're still there, and they're still on the tax roll for us. So, but this actually was, I think, the prime piece of property at that size and where it's located on that it has the frontage on Meridian. So it is something that was saleable. All right, other comments or questions? Hearing none.
Does this need a roll call, or?
I don't believe so, but we can do it. Not a problem.
I think we do.
I'd call for a roll call vote on this.
Okay, we will have that. Did you write this motion, by the way?
Very well done, isn't it?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
We can give Derek credit for that one, though.
All right, we have a motion that the Groseal Township Board hereby authorizes the transfer of ownership of parcel number 003-003-00002-000 to the Groseal Open Space account at a price of $128,250 to be transferred from account number 2450-101-971000, which is the open space purchase account, to account number 10-10-00-00-673-000, which is the general fund sales land account, and further directs the township attorney to complete the deed modifications associated with the transfer and authorizes the township manager to execute the necessary documents to complete the sale. Roll call vote. We'll start with Kyle.
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Uda.
Aye.
David.
Aye.
Jameson.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Bill, congratulations. And thank you. All right. what does that leave us? Oh, gosh, it's the Centennial Farm operating.
Event we have all been waiting for.
Uda, take it away.
Okay. I'm going to read the motion and then give a short history and explanation beyond what was written in our packets. And I am really pleased to be able to bring this to the board and to have an open conversation about it, because it was a very complicated and complex subject and topic. So I think it's important that the public, both present and watching, hears what went behind this. I'm also doing some of what Derek calls heavy lifting, because Township Manager Derek Thiel and Recreation Department Manager Kim O'Farrell are both not here tonight, and yet they worked very, very hard along with Supervisor Budney, Trustee Nadeau, Treasurer Nadeau, and our Township Attorney, Kristen at Rosati, et cetera, et al. Even though I like saying Armbeuchler.
Yeah.
That being said, I would like to make a motion that the Township Board vote and approve the operating agreement for Centennial Farm presented here.
Second.
So the Luton, and I have to say, I've been here through that whole process. When the township bought the farm,
Back in 97.
literally and metaphorically speaking, right? We bought the
Yes.
farm with a township millage back in 1996. We had a millage question, millage for purchase of historic horse farm, which also had with it the said purchase property is planned for recreational purposes, an animal shelter, an equestrian center, and preservation of the Centennial Farm. Those were the purposes that the township set forward in requesting this money from the voters. And the voters approved it, and the township board then moved ahead and bought the property. At the time, and again, if memory serves correctly, there was an equestrian boarding facility on the site run by two individuals from the township, and they utilized the arena as well as the Red Barn. When the township bought the farm, they agreed to continue operating, but changed essentially the business model to incorporate now being part of a public-private entity. There was a partnership that a private group was providing a service to the public that the public either could not provide for itself or decided not to provide for itself. I think that lasted a short number of years, and they eventually retired from the project. So the township, and I'm a little fuzzy on this, I don't know if Findlay University came first, but I think we did an RFP.
They did.
And we got an offer from Findlay University in Ohio, and they came in and they used our farm as part of their equestrian program. And essentially their graduates and students were managing the farm, and it became educational, not just for the university, but then also they were teaching riding lessons, etc. One of the Findlay people lived in the apartment and was on the site 24/7. That lasted a few years, maybe not many, and eventually Findlay pulled out. So one more time, the township pulled it together and decided to run the farm, the equestrian center, as a township enterprise. And I think that lasted only a couple of years. We brought in a professional who ran the stables, gave the lessons, etc. In the meantime, we also did some improvements to the property. We added heating and lighting to the arena. We created a drained outdoor riding arena directly adjacent to the recreation building. Of course, during that time, we also built the recreation building that was an old pole barn that we converted into our events building. But that didn't last very long. And eventually we did another RFP and we came up with the Lutons. The Lutons came in and said that they would run this program. In the past, we've had 2 5-year contracts with the Lutons, and that goes to explain a little bit about why we went for a 5-year contract. I was not on the commission when the process started, so I can't really speak to some of the decisions that were made early on, but I think it started out as simply a renewal. The Luton Writing Academy had been on a month-to-month basis since their contract expired in June of 2022. And ultimately what happened is township manager, treasurer, Nadu, Supervisor Budney, myself, the attorney, met with the Lutons, Ricky and Rob, and we started the process of negotiating a new contract. That was a 1.5-year process. It was a long and sometimes, I'll be honest, contentious process. We were going from a contract that had been left at $1,100 a month for a long time. And I have to announce really that was a township board decision. That doesn't go back to a recreation manager or commission. I think the township board had a idea that it was to provide an equestrian center at Centennial Farm. And if it had to be if the township had to contribute to the sustenance of that, then so be it, but we wanted to be able to provide that service. And so that was a conscious decision of the board. And if you've watched our meetings in the past, when people would come into the meetings, there has always been historically a lot of community support for keeping the horse farm as a horse farm and for keeping the Lutons as the equestrian provider. So that being said, I know that people came to our meeting today and made some comments, and I wanted to kind of explain to you, as I did with my colleagues on the board. At the risk of being called a windbag, I think it's important that this information is shared. First of all, we had the input of the new township attorney on this process, and she brought some very valuable input and insights into the negotiations, but also into the contract language, so that a lot of things were tightened up and refreshed. And I would say mostly to the benefit of both parties. It's always important in a contract that things are clear for all concerned. I wanted to justify the term of 5 years. One, it was because previous contracts had been for 5 years, but also because this enabled us to build in an escalator clause so that in years 4 and 5 there would be a 3% increase to the rent.
It actually starts after 21 months.
After 21 months, okay, thank you. Always good to be clear. And then if there is a 5-year renewal, that escalator goes right into the renewal. So every year we're going to be looking at either a cost adjustment. That is something that's been woefully lacking in past contracts. I've heard both sides from people that they think the increase from $1,100 a month to $1,900 a month is either way too big or way too small. But for our purposes, we think that's as far as we could go. It's a 72% increase, and it was agreed to by both parties, and it enables us to do a number of things which we wouldn't be able to do. And I'll go into that a bit later. So a big topic has been maintenance, and the language in the contract about maintenance of the facilities. And we were very conscious of this during our negotiations, but the fact of the matter that we can't deny is that we will be responsible for the maintenance of the facility, whether or not there is a tenant in that facility. So if the roof needs replacing, it doesn't matter whether we have a tenant in the building or not. Unless we intend to demolish the building, we have to repair that roof. Now, I did like the idea of a possible cost share that Ms. Walker brought up. That might be something we can consider in future contracts. It did not come up in this round. I would also like to say this is the end round. I don't think there will be another round of negotiations after this. The other thing is that this renewal, this 5-year contract, gives us the time to pursue the answers to some of the questions that have been coming up in the last few months as we've been going through this. I do not have an answer why they did not go out for an RFP at the beginning of the process, although I believe it was simply because this was going to be a renewal of a contract and not there was no intention to go out for a new provider. But since that has been raised, there's a lot of conversation around what do we want to do with Centennial Farm. And unfortunately, this contract isn't the time for us to make that decision, but it gives us the time and the leeway to put a process into place. Mr. Zelasco talked about a 5-year plan. The commission is ready to do a Centennial Farm master plan update, and it's overdue, and we need to do public hearings, public meetings again to see. It seems like there's been a shift in the views of the township community and the board, whether or not to continue operating a equestrian facility. The big problem there for the township, and it's not something we can answer right now or tomorrow, is can we do that? Because we bought the facility and the land with a fairly specific purpose in the millage language. So if we want to change the purpose or shift the purpose, what are our options? We'll definitely need to have legal opinions and legal justification to do that. And I think that's something that we are committed to doing or interested in doing for sure. It will always have to be recreation related though we've had to reassure people, we're not looking at soccer fields, we're not looking at baseball diamonds, night baseball, we're not looking for volleyball courts. We really do want to keep an agricultural farm-like atmosphere there that's also quiet for all the residents that surround the property. Another thing that I wanted to point out is the concept of the private and public partnership. There are other farms on the island. There are lots of businesses on the island that do business with other businesses under business rules. But when you are, and I don't mean to be the teacher here in a sense, but when you're in a public-private partnership, the rules are different, and we have different processes that we have to operate under. And one of the limitations, for instance, on the vendor at Centennial Farm is that they do have to provide public access to their facility. They have to provide programs to the public. And, and that goes beyond riding lessons. We want to have them participate in farm events. We want you to be able to come visit Centennial Farm with your kids or grandkids and be able to walk, through the barn under supervision, of course. But they're making some concessions to having the public present. There are things that they cannot do because they are on a public site in a public area. So we're trying very hard to balance those things that will help benefit both sides. And I think to the last end, what I wanted to really end up saying is whether or not the township board tonight approves this lease agreement, the township will still be responsible for maintenance of the farm and the farm facilities. But having the income and a in situ vendor or client or renter makes it a lot easier for us to be able to continue earning money in the facility while we work to improve the facility, while we work with the vendor to improve services to the township, and much more so than it would be if the building were sitting empty and we didn't have anybody in there. And we cannot have just anybody in there, because whoever rents that space will have to be able to provide a public service to the residents of Grosse Ile. It's not just somebody can rent the barns for their own horses or storage. They would have to provide some sort of public service to the township. So that makes it more complicated for us, and it obviously makes it more complicated for them. So to my colleagues on the board and the people out in the audience, we have all talked very long and hard and given this a lot of consideration. I'm very pleased that Kyle asked to have this put on the action agenda so that we could have this open conversation. But I want to leave you with the thought that right now the Recreation Commission and the Recreation Director feel that we are able to make the changes that we think we need to do under much better circumstances with a tenant than we would be able to without a tenant.
And if I may, I just want to add, we had the millage language that somewhat tied us into what we could do. But the millage was November of '96. We bought the farm in '97. In '97, zoning was changed, and that area was shown as zoning public recreation district. And that further limits what can go in there. We can't take that land and build a building and have storage in there. It's very specific as to it's permitted to be used for. And actually, if you look at the list of things in there, about the only thing that can make some money and lease it from us would be the riding stable, the equestrian. So our hands are tied there also.
I do need to make a correction also for all of you. We received a map, obviously, with this, and in the contract language, listing the parts of the site that are exclusively for the use of the equestrian center, number 10 is listed, and on the map, number 10 is actually the dog park and pavilion, but what was intended is what looks like a number 10 on the red barn. So the red barn, so just for you in the audience, they would have access to parcels 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are directly to the north and east of the animal shelter. One is the outdoor riding arena, and then there's 2 separate paddocks attached to that, all fenced in. It would be number 5 is a small riding circle that might at some point have been used by little ponies, for a pony ride, but right now it's just storage for the farm. Number 6 and number 7, which are paddocks, and then number 8 has reverted to the township. And number 9 is the entrance to the red barn, and number 10 is the red barn. So, and then there's a shared use of number 11 and 12, where people can conceivably ride, and they can use the entire outer perimeter as a bridle path. And then, of course, there's a recreation open space, passive recreation parcel that leads out to Meridian. That has also been developed as a bridle path or as some place that people can ride their horses. And do you, Elena, know how to, can you put that on the Elmo for me? Okay, so that's it for me. So you can see on there the numbers that have been highlighted. And, maybe I just, there. So just, it'll be this group of paddocks here. This is the red barn right here and the entrance. This is the little riding circle, number 6 and number 7, which have been fenced in. Number 8 was not fenced in. 1, we could not afford to do so. And then number 12 here is the shared. This is the rec building right here. This is the pavilion, parking, the rose garden, and the dog park. And then around the entire perimeter here is a bridle path. And then there's also laying out toward the open space.
I would add to that, this might have not have been the cleanest handling, to be kind, of this agreement. A lot was going on. There was some, unfortunately, some negotiating going on in the public meeting at REC, and I did not get into it because it's not my job to get into these things, and I wanted to stay out. But at the end, nothing was. They were doing things kind of piecemeal, and you can't vote on one paragraph or one section and then go back in the next section. So I did step in and tried to get us all on the same page, all on one item. Here, we're going through everything. This is going to be it. We agree or we don't agree. If we don't agree, you have your 30 days to move, and we'll go a different route. And that's what we'd be faced with here. If this does not pass, we'll move them out and we'll go in a different direction, if that's what the board wants. This is by far the best agreement that anybody has had with that farm. The escalator clauses, the fact that at the end of 5 years, if we want to renew, it has to be both parties agreeing to it, not just one party as it was before. There were a lot of things that not only I, but even Derek and the rest thought were deficient in the old agreement, but it was an agreement. In all fairness, you have to remember an agreement is between two parties, and whatever was in that old contract, as bad as it might have been, the township agreed to it. And over time, I've heard things kind of blaming the lessee on things, and it's not his fault for that agreement. We both agreed to it, being the township and them, as was this. I know there's been talk and will be, I believe, more talk regarding maintenance. But the fact of the matter is, those are all our buildings. It's an operating agreement. It's for them to operate their business. That's what it is. It's not a lease of property for them to have total control over. Their control is over the business that they run and how they have to run that business with the various public items. I was very pleased that we got the escalators, which I think were sorely needed. As far as the amount, it was based on a horse farm type lease contract, how it is done, not on how you lease out commercial property, because commercial property doesn't apply here. So we cannot do that. We cannot do that. And so it was bargained for by the team. This is what they came up with. It's a huge step from what it was, especially with the escalators. We do have the escalators. They do start after 21 months. So we're starting on an April 1st. So we can run a year and 9 months, Then we go to a calendar year, basically, and that starts with the 3% escalator in the lease amount. So, I mean, you can always ask for more. It's a matter of what where you're going and what you're going to do. We were into the contract was up in June and no negotiation had been had, which was a stumbling block right off the start. So the tenant is in there at the old rent on a month to month, which does, although any rent is better than no rent, but it wasn't a rent that we wanted to see, and we want to get to a rent that we thought was good. The rec commission and Kim was part of that negotiating team. The commission looked at this. They agreed to it. And the fact that it isn't forever. It is a 5-year. It is a 5-year lease if in fact everything goes right. So all in all, I don't know how many people want to come in and do that equestrian type operation. The rec department decided not to go out for RFPs, but that's what the RFP would be coming for. Would be pretty much exactly what we have here. It's how many people are you going to find with this, with these limitations. So all in all, we thought for the short term, which 5 years is a short term, that this was really a good deal. A good deal in the sense that it's much better than what we had. It gives us more. They did the fences. Part of doing what, looking at what you need is looking at it constantly, maintaining it during the time, not letting it get into such disrepair that you have to replace. We all know replacement of anything is very, very expensive. If we keep on top of our maintenance items, probably within that 5 years, they're not going to spend a lot of money. So, could they? Could something happen? Sure, something could. Nobody's saying nothing can happen, but the fact is, right now, some of this is going back to fixing windows, et cetera, that have been broken for years, and we ignored fixing them. And there's nothing wrong with bringing us up to date. Let's start with a clean slate. Let's start with a good building and good mechanics, so we don't have the big repair, the big maintenance item. And we also thought, looking at that and what we had to do, that we were in a good position. That's what we were told. So that's what I have to add to it. We do have many restrictions on what we can do with that property. Now, we can just not have them in there and do it ourselves. We still have all those expenses. So at least here we're getting something for it. Other comments, and I'm going to go to Kyle because
Sure.
I think he just might have a comment.
Well, no, I'm grateful, Uta and Jim, for that background. I think it's helpful for everyone to hear all that. I hear also what you just said, and that if we don't approve this tonight, that you think that means that they'd be out in 30 days. I've got to hope that wouldn't be the case. I know that you all were intimately involved in the lease negotiations, but as we've been on a month-to-month so far for 10 months, I'd have to hope that a month-to-month could continue until possibly another lease could be negotiated or some other thing could figure it out. So I want to be clear, I don't support, I would not want the current leasee to be out if we were to vote no for this tonight. And be further clear, I greatly value Centennial Farm as a public space. It's one of the few public spaces we have as a township where folks of all ages come together for all different reasons, senior luncheons down to little kids' Easter things. I know my 3-year-old loves it. He calls it Horsey Park, and the access there to the horses is very important to him and to us. I want to be very clear. I think continuing it as a horse farm is a good thing. But again, going back to why I felt like I had to pull this out. I know this very well. I was on the rec commission before. I know the ins and outs of this. I don't like coming in at this moment after you all have negotiated this and pulling it out. I know that's not ideal in the situation, and we're a township board, so these things have to come before us, and we all got to approve them and look at them. We just went through a budget process. Throughout that budget process, I continually asked about capital improvements, needing to know what our capital improvement plans are so that we can go into these sorts of agreements eyes wide open. We don't have that in this case, so I hear folks saying that this is the best deal we can get. I respect that, and it's impossible to say whether it's a good deal or not without knowing the actual maintenance that we do need to do. And
Have you talked to Kim about that?
I have.
And she doesn't have an idea?
There is at least one quote on the windows that I know of. I don't know if I should say it out loud.
No,
but I know we haven't done the roof. We haven't looked at the roof. Bottom line, there is good things in the lease. I want to be very clear. There are some very good things. One of them is the first thing to do is to come together, come to a list of all these things that are needed. And for me, that can be the beginnings of a capital improvement plan. Ideally, that we can get in the next 6 months to a year so that we know what is actually needed there, and we can go into this agreement with eyes wide open. Right now, we're not. What we do have, though, is a history that we just approved through our latest budget. We know how much those fences cost. It was a lot of money, as we all know, $160,000 plus. This current lease over a 5-year term doesn't even cover the fencing over that $160,000 over that 5-year term. So that's one concern. The RFP is a concern for me too. Again, I would hope that if this weren't agreed to tonight, that we'd go back to a month and figure out a way. I'd be open to a shorter term lease on this. 1-2 years would be ideal for me. Up to 3 years would be the max that I would feel comfortable with, because that's 3 years of liability that we're on the hook for a lot of this stuff without a lot of flexibility. So I hear you both saying we're on the hook for the maintenance of those buildings, but while we have someone in there, there's not a lot of flexibility around that, so like that's liability we are on the hook for. If the roof goes down tomorrow, we got to fix it tomorrow, whereas if there's not someone there or there's other things that we can do, there's more flexibility around that, I feel. So anyway, that's where I'm at. It's not something I like to do. It's not my most pleasant thing to be pulling this out, to be voting no on this. Is one of the harder things I've had to do since I've been up here. But again, I'm just looking at the numbers, and to me, the numbers just don't work for the township and over the 5-year term. So for that reason, I will be voting no on that agreement tonight.
And I would throw in with Kyle's lot. I think there's several more things that need to be considered. The first thing I saw was that rec wasn't unanimous on this vote. So they're not coming from a strong place of recommendation. The lack of the capital improvement plan does concern me, which, that could end up costing us a lot of money. I'm curious what the residents' usage rates are. We're like, we got to provide this equestrian farm. I don't know. I don't know how many people have horses there. Maybe it's everybody but me, and we do have to provide an equestrian farm, but I'm not sure. And then it does feel a bit like we're subsidizing a private business, which is what a public-private partnership is. So if we are going to do that, I'd just like to be able to have all the information, so that I feel like we're doing it for a reason. Right now, the argument that we need to approve this lease because the current operators will leave, and it's the best we can do, isn't a very strong argument. So, I think we can, like Kyle said, I think we can maybe shorten the lease, come back to the table, get some more information, and go from there.
Carl?
I first of all want to compliment everybody that was involved in this process. It's been very difficult. I had the pleasure of speaking with Ms. O'Connor the other day. She gave me more than an hour of time, and I did a lot of listening. I learned a lot. But I have some concerns over this contract as it's presented. I share the idea that horses are the sport of kings for a good reason. They're darn expensive. And I don't know of anybody that makes money with horseback lessons, riding lessons, stabling, boarding, any of the stuff that they have to offer. I think that the real money in horses, if you approach it objectively, is from buying and selling and showing horses and helping other people who do that, which is what my understanding is happening right now. But when I look at this contract, there's a provision in there, and Jim, you've noted this, after 21 months we have 3% increases. Inflation last year was 8%. So we're going backwards 5% on that. I don't like that. I think it should be 3% or more, whichever is greater. That's what we see in a lot of contracts. Not a cap on the top, but a cap on the bottom. It's my understanding that we spent between $160,000 and $180,000 for fences. And when I've been over there, various events and functions, I've seen a lot of damage to the fences that appears to have been caused by the horses where they're chewing on them. Now, if we put $160,000 or $180,000 into that, I believe that there was a maintenance clause in the last contract that required the leasing party to help maintain that. And I don't pretend that horses did all of that damage, but when you look at the replacement of rails, you look at the replacement of some of the posts, and you put wood posts into mud, bad things happen to the post over the course of 10, 12 years. You have to replace them. I don't know that there was a lot of money put into maintenance by the current party leasing the property. When I look at paragraph H, number 7 on page 96, where they talk about maintenance, if that maintenance hasn't been done in the past and we execute a new contract, that contract states that we are going to be, the person leasing the property, replacement of any broken windows in both the Red Barn and Air Arena boarding facility that are currently broken, as well as other maintenance about the property, including those fences. We will have arguably waived that because they pick up from the beginning of this contract. So if we have a contract out there that said for the last 5 years, the party leasing it is supposed to maintain the fences, and it hasn't been done, I submit that language says they are no longer responsible for that. And $160,000 to $180,000, as Kyle has noted, is not going to be covered by a 5-year lease.
Hey, Carl, it actually says in the lease, upon execution of the agreement, the parties agree to meet and assess the state of repair of all portions, etc. Operator shall not be responsible for repairing any portions of the property in disrepair at the time of the execution of this agreement.
At the time of the execution of this agreement. What that means.
The township is on the...
What that means, Carl, what you have to know is that that was discussed. Those broken windows have been broken forever.
Right.
That's the way they got them. And we never did our maintenance. The fences were done, and it wasn't their responsibility unless the horses ruined them. It wasn't the horses that did it. That's why we replaced the fences. And it was because we didn't maintain. We let them get into such disrepair that they had to be replaced rather than to be fixed. The material that they used in the replacement is, for lack of a better term, horseproof. Horses won't gnaw on this type of material. That's why they went away from wood. All those things were looked at. They're not getting away with anything. This is something that should have been done long ago, long before Kim, actually. So I'm certainly not necessarily, that fault is not hers. These things were things that just were never looked at the money was always put someplace else rather than owning up to the contract that they had. What we tried to do in the contract is, both parties talk. What should we be responsible? Your rec department said this is what we think we should be responsible for. That I'm just a background.
And I appreciate that. I'm also looking at the price, the 160 to 180.
Which is done, and you're not going to be doing that again this year.
But Carl, if I could, there was never any expectation when Kim spent that money out of her capital fund, there was never an expectation that the cost of that fencing be recouped within 1 year or 2 years through not lease of the land, but the operating of their equestrian center.
If I may, Carl? So that's true, Dave. And, well, first, to correct you, it's not just the capital improvement money that REC had to pull from. It was also additional money that REC had to pull from to cover the cost of the fences last year. You're right. There's no expectation that we're going to recover that. That's gone.
Right.
For me, it's just an example of what the sorts of things we could be facing moving forward that we're not going to recover from this lease money,
Well,
in my
and
opinion.
part of that problem, again,
Yeah.
was nobody was setting anything aside. And the fences, the fence when it started, as far as replacement, was not all the fences. Later in the year, the commission decided, the department decided, and the commission approved, let's just do them all. So it was 160 because they decided to do them all rather than, I think actually,
Well,
something like 80,000.
I was there for
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Chad came here. I asked him about the lease. I voted for those fences. I regret that vote now, knowing how this lease ended up. So,
It was in the old lease, it would have been theirs
well,
also.
what I'm saying is, again, knowing everything I know now, I would not have voted for those fences.
And that's fine.
Anyway, but, that's where I'm at. And that's the biggest issue. When the maintenance runs over, what is REC going to have to do? They're going to have to pull from other areas of their budget to cover this maintenance.
Well, they have money, they have other money in Centennial Farm. They're not going to be pulling from rec programs or from
Well,
Water's
they
Edge.
did, Jim, they did that last year with the fences.
Well, they had the extra money. They had the extra money.
Yeah,
They
but
have
that's extra money that could be used for other rec
Well,
programs.
yes,
Yeah.
sure it could. But when you make a contract and you're responsible for something, you have to live up to your end of the bargain.
Totally, and that's why I'm saying I don't support this contract.
Well, because what you'd like to see
Yeah.
is that we don't have to do anything, and you want it's not going to happen.
That's not true.
It's not gonna happen.
I'd like a better deal. I'd like
Well-
I'd like the opportunity to see if there's a possible better deal out there with an RFP or something like that. Yeah.
I'd look to just ask a couple more questions.
Sure.
You're fine. You're fine. I'm enjoying this. I'm learning a little bit. But at the same time, I also look at the insurance requirements, and the question that comes to mind is, did we have this run by the township's insurance? Is there enough coverage on that? Because
did have it run by the township's
Okay.
insurance.
so they're satisfied with that because, we had a really nice place at Tawas many, many years ago and used to like to go over horseback riding. And that was closed, as were a number of others, because of insurance issues within liability for the state of Michigan. So I want to make sure that's been covered. And if you're good with those numbers and you're telling me that's fine, that's good. But the
Our
big-
insurance people, yeah, they looked into that. The insurance, they tell us the insurance is good.
we're covered with that, then I am very, very thankful for that. But a concern that I have is we are spending, and I'm going to say it in a different way than Kyle has. We're spending a lot of money on a community area that has a limited amount of public participation with horses in equestrian. And I don't know whether there was a mistake made in 1996 or 97 about purchasing it with the idea that we would have that, but I don't see a lot of, or hear of an awful lot of, community members going over there and participating in horseback riding, getting lessons, or having anything that would justify the community cost on this. I'm having a hard time getting my arms wrapped around the idea that we're spending a lot of money and we're getting something back, $1,900 a month now with an escalator. But what is the benefit to the public? What's the public purpose? And I'm having a hard time. I see more vehicles lined up at the rec building for whether it is a retirement party, a wedding shower, graduation, or anything else. I don't get a sense that there is an awful lot of public involvement with the equestrian center part of the building, part of the complex.
And before you jump in, I would just say that would be true of almost any the senior center. Not a whole lot of seniors use it. Should we shut down the senior center? Every group, everything we have is a small amount of the community that uses it. That applies to absolutely everything that we do.
But do we have a sense of the number of people in the community that actually are participating in it as an equestrian center?
We do have a sense of the numbers of people. Obviously, we know who's taking lessons, who's part of the equestrian team, et cetera. We talk about, when we talked, I mentioned Kurt Vonnegut, animated wallpaper. God bless you, Mr. Rosewater, right? One of the reasons we have the baby showers, the prom parties, the birthday parties, et cetera, is because the rec building is located at the horse farm. And that is part of the cachet, for lack of a better word, that people come to Centennial Farm for. I mean, obviously, we also have the animal shelter. Excuse me, we have the dog park. In the past, when the Rec Commission had public hearings about the master plan and uses for the farm, overwhelming support for anything equestrian. And if the commission at the time made any kind of a gesture toward moving in a different direction, we got great outpouring of support from the people who supported the horse farm, one, but also from the public. Now, obviously, I'm sensing there's been a change, right? And so we do need to reevaluate where we are with the horse farm. I think that is a process that the Recreation Commission has no choice but to proceed with, and we've been gearing up for that as we go. It'll be a lot easier for us to go through this process, though, knowing we've got the rent income coming in from a sitting tenant at the farm. I'm not sure that the negotiations will be able to continue because we've already turned down the contract once. The Rec Commission turned down the contract initially, which brought the parties back together. I don't think there's a lot in there that the two parties are going to be able to re-agree to. So I'm not saying this as a threat. I don't want you to perceive it as a threat. I'm just saying it's not very likely that all this great information. Obviously, at this point, I'm thinking we should have had you all sit on those negotiations at the beginning. But the public input has been there. And the commission felt very strongly that there is a public mission with the horse farm, keeping it as a horse farm. It doesn't mean that all of us are riding horses, going for lessons and things like that. It's just the intangible of having this place where we can go sit at a picnic table and watch horses out in the meadows, right? And the question is here, how are we willing to pay for that luxury to have that? And that's where the whole planning process comes in. And once we start having those meetings again, we'll know if that support is still there. But I know we've sat in meetings in here where 30, 40 people came in and, like this, about the horse farm. We want to keep the horse farm. People came in and said, I've never ridden a horse in my life. I don't think I ever will. But, we want to keep that piece of Grosse Ile history. I mean, it's a historical barn. It's a piece of our history. So So yes, I don't want to, get back into all that, but there is that support that we have. And again, we feel like there was not a unanimous vote on the commission. 2 members were absent, not that it was not a rhetorical absence. I mean, they were really out of the state, out of the place. We had 2 members who did vote no, and they had very specific reasons for their voting no. And we knew those reasons all along, and that was part of our conversation and part of our negotiation, taking their concerns into account. There's a level of their concern, though, that we could not go because, again, it was a public-private thing and because of limitations of interpersonal things that you can't consider in a contract, right? You just can't. So I think overall, the commission supported it, but yes, it was not unanimous. But we don't always get a unanimous support. And, we've gone through that on a number of other issues as well. And I'm happy to say, if we don't have unanimous support from this board, if we pass the contract, we will continue to move forward to get, just kind of we did with the fee schedule, to move forward to accomplish the things that we've been hearing that we're seeing. And if we don't pass the contract tonight, there will be an attempt to revive negotiations, but I can't promise you from either side that that's going to be successful. And I have word from the township manager that feels like they have already expended the maximum amount of township resources to get to this point, in terms of time and effort. And they feel very confident about the language. Our attorney went over this with a fine-tooth comb. We sat together and did this over hours, point by point by point. So there is a high level of confidence, but there's no guarantees in any contract. So, but I gotta say, I truly appreciate the amount of thought and consideration and nail biting that goes into this, because we are taking a chance. It is a chance. So, but we haven't heard from Joe.
If I can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry, Carl.
No, and
No, forgive me.
I view all of this as a prelude to the ultimate question, and that is, what is the public purpose that's being served here? And I'm not going to talk about we do this for the people or anything else. The public purpose here, if we are simply maintaining a centennial farm because it's 100 years old, I understand that. I get that. But I would be much more comfortable with this if there was some kind of a study, or as Mr. Zalasko refers to, a 5-year plan for having this farm more community focused. And if we had some kind of a program that was proposed by the Lutons for making it more community usable, accessible, I'd be happier with spending the sums of money that it seems like we're going to be spending in perpetuity, so that we have some kind of a community purpose in spirit with what the millage was. I'm not comfortable spending an awful lot of money so that we can preserve something in perpetuity for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year that's being run by essentially private enterprise. I understand we get benefit from their being there and the space, the property there, the public can use. But at the end of the day, a horse farm to me is something that ought to be reaching out more to the public than with the idea of we're going to preserve and maintain the buildings and the property that are there, and we're getting a subsidy of $1,900 a year or a month and roughly $23,000 or $22,000 and change per year. I think that we need to have a plan from CRC coming forward with how we're going to use it. And I think the Lutons ought to be able to go ahead and make some offerings to the public that go beyond stabling. I'd like to see more with horseback riding lessons, getting people involved at that level. That's
It's
where I'm
all
at.
there. It's all there.
But I don't see a push for it. I don't see a
No, you
push for
can get
anything.
What-
horseback riding lessons at Centennial Farms.
They conduct tours. They do everything that rec asked them to do.
And that may be the problem. We need to ask them to do something that makes it more community user.
And that's what that's what I was trying to
and-
say. Maybe it wasn't
in-
clear, but that is our intention.
They sponsor the equestrian
in
team at the
going-
schools.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a small group, right?
Sure.
Well,
I
sure it
think-
is.
But what I was trying to illustrate to you is that we are moving forward with these things. This contract represents a step in communicating between the township and the tenant that had kind of fallen apart, and we don't want to necessarily rehash some
No.
of that because I think the township was culpable in some of those situations. So I think there is definitely a movement afoot on the commission, but also in the community to illustrate what our purpose is. I don't mean to mean light of this, but I kind of also heard, I kind of felt like an FAA official sitting there listening to someone explain to me why they should spend $5 million on Grosse Isles Taxiway when hardly anyone uses the Grosse Isles Taxiway. But yet we approached the FAA to say, we've got this slightly used airport, but we want to maintain it as an airport. We have an Island Fest, we have some static air shows, but thank God, they're willing to invest in this little airport. I feel the same way about Centennial Farm, but it's not just because it's 100 years old. Like I said, the master plan process, though, takes time. It doesn't happen from today to tomorrow. You have to initiate. It takes, Derek said something between 18 and 24 months, right? So if we start, we've started the process, but we still have to get going into the process. By the time we're ready for a renewal, we'll have answers. We may go out for an RFP back then. We may have changed the way we view. Right now, we bought the farm as an equestrian horse farm. If we want to change that, we have to learn what are the mechanisms available to us. And I would prefer to do that earning $1,900 a month in rent instead of $1,100 in rent. Because the obligations don't change. We're still responsible for all those other things, regardless of where we stand. But again, I don't want to hog this conversation.
No,
And
and my only comment on that is I agree with what you're saying, but I would prefer to see that with a 3-year contract as opposed to a 5. And let's see where we stand.
Understood.
That's a 3-year learning process. I would be fine with that. I could support that. Kyle had mentioned that. I think a 3-year makes an awful lot of sense on something like that. Let's see where we are. Those are my thoughts.
We haven't heard from Joe. I was going
We did try the 3-year, but with the 3-year, we do lose the escalator. It was a tough sell to get the escalator after 21 months. So, again, that's the trade-off. But I think I don't want to take the supervisors.
I'm just thinking of different things that we could do. A lot of these things should have been brought up way before the end of the negotiation. And it would be hard for us to go back and say, we negotiated in good faith and now we want all this. I would hope that, again, I would hope that we could pass that. And all those things are not bad things. They just should have been brought to us at the beginning of the negotiation, not at this point.
And we should have asked for them at
Well,
the beginning. I don't
well,
want you to.
Well, I mean, it's like anything. I mean, you leave it to your departments. We don't, whether it's fire, police, DPS, we leave it to those departments and commissions, which we did here. Here's what they came out with, and now we have these things, some of which really don't pertain to the contract, but pertain to a bigger question. Should we have horses there at all anymore? I mean, of course, if we don't, then all that, now maybe we, tear down the barns. I don't know what you'd do, but all that expense would be ours now. You're not renting it, you're not leasing it to anybody, because there's nothing to lease. So I would hope the same, pretty much reiterate what Uda said. I would hope that we could pass this contract because it's only for the first part. We're not tied in for 10 years. We have a much better income coming in. We're not looking at, because believe me, although I didn't see a plan either, but I certainly would think that Kim would know if, yep, we're going to sign this and next year we got to put a new roof on the barn. That's going to cost buku dollars. I don't think we're in that situation. I hear you. All those things are good. I'm not sure they're good at this time. I would like to see if we could pass this, or if 3 years is the consensus, maybe we can go back to them. But you're losing, as Uda said, you're losing your escalator. They're not going for an escalator. There was a lot of discussion of the escalator and when it kicked in and how it was going to affect. They have to think about how it affects them too. And if they can't afford it, and they said, we're going to have to rearrange things because of this going up, what did you say, 70-some%?
Right.
So that's why the first 21 months doesn't have an escalator in it.
So that's about $2,500 over the 3 years of the lease that there
Correct.
will be an escalator. So it's not exactly like, we're not talking big money here on the escalator.
Well, the escalator wouldn't even, it would go into effect in 21 months, like you say, right?
Right.
And then
So
it's
the
57.
January of 25, the calendar year 25, it
Right,
would go
comes
in.
out to about
So
$2,600.
25, 26, 27 would be, in this term, would be when the escalator kicks in.
For me, I personally I think it's worth it to sacrifice the $800 that we lose this month to propose that solution, even without the escalator, because that, for me, takes away 2 years of liability from us for some of those buildings.
Oh, it doesn't. It doesn't take any liability away from us.
It does, in the sense that we're without the when we're locked into a lease. If something happens to any of those buildings, we have a historic barn there, which, as you all know, could be very, very expensive to find a way to maintain if something happens to that barn. If something were to happen, then you stop operations there.
Absolutely.
But if you have a 5-year lease, you can't stop operations. We've got to find a way to cover that budget. Rec budget is tiny compared to our overall township budget. It's 5% of our township budget. If something big happens there, rec cannot cover it. We're going to have to cover it from somewhere else. So for me, again, losing the escalator, another month of rent is worth losing the 2 years of liability we have for that thing, and forces the township to figure out solutions to these problems quicker, in my opinion.
But Kyle, the roof on that barn is ours, regardless of what's there.
Yep. But right now, just to be very clear, so we're on a month to month.
I don't think you can let it go into that kind of disrepair.
I don't want to, but if we don't have the money, we've got to figure out where it comes from. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I think we're the only person I haven't heard from Joe. I'm not going to put him on the spot. If not, I'd be willing to vote on a proposed amendment along the lines you suggested, Jim, around the 3 years.
Well, and what I was going to, rather than, we don't have a buy-in on the 3. What I would ask, if that's the consensus, that we table this action item and go back to Luton's within the next few weeks before our next meeting, and even if it took until the second April meeting, go back and see if we can get the 3-year.
I'd be in favor of that.
I would support
person.
that.
Yeah.
I also want to just indicate, I sincerely take to heart your words about where we were when we had this contract expire and where we should be today. I note that when we sat down with the POAM and the TPOAM, we had a roundtable, and that was phenomenally successful. And that's something that hadn't been done previously, and I personally thank you for that, Jim, and for the work that you and Dave and Uta did on this. I'm not downplaying what you've done. I think you've done a lot of good work, a lot of heavy lifting, but I think at the same time, 3 years seems to me to make more sense than would 5 years. Let's see what Rec comes up with, and maybe we all sit down. Jameson's talked us into a study session once a month. Maybe we sit down and figure out what we can do with this.
Opportunity.
You know, but I look at that, and
Well,
3
then-
years to me is something that's,
All right,
I
but
can
be
support.
very careful with, you're taking away from that commission and department. And if it happens to them, you're gonna be doing it for every department.
I just look at the amount of money involved here, and I
I
get
don't,
it.
what's
I
the
get it.
money? Tell me what the money is. That's what I'm not seeing.
Well, I think
What I,
You're,
what-
a lot of what
let me
ifs.
just- Let me just add to this, because I think what you just said was very true. And I think Kyle hinted at it too. Perhaps it's not up to the commissions to negotiate our contracts anymore.
Well,
And
they
maybe
don't.
that's what we're saying here.
Okay,
Well, you know
the
what I'm
quotient, they only recommend
Right.
after
No,
the,
no.
you know, it's been
Yeah,
negotiated.
But you corrected me, and
Yes.
you were right to do so. But bottom line is that maybe the negotiation process before anything like this ever comes to a board again is that it goes through that study session process where everybody gets their input.
I like that.
And I think that is very valuable. And if I take any lesson away from this, that it is that. Because there have been a number of times when I told you, either of you have persuaded me that maybe, you know, but again, my loyalty in that sense is to the rec, and the rec thought this was a good plan to go forward. We need, you know, we can't underscore how much we need revenue. I think we can certainly try the 3-year, but I don't think the 5-year came from the township. Okay, so we may end up right back where we are today, but it is worth the effort. We're not, you know, our
Absolutely.
backs are not up against a wall. So, you know, we're not going to be out anything if we table this and we take that step forward. Actually, I think that's a brilliant idea.
Well,
But we
and
haven't heard
before
from-
before, do we have, yeah, and maybe Joe, you know, Joe, if you want to say anything, certainly we want to hear from. If you don't, that's fine too. But anybody else?
Just, what are we voting on now?
Well, we're
Well-
not voting on anything right now.
We would be tabling this action item.
So you're in the
I mean,
consensus.
that's what I would
No.
propose.
Obviously,
We're just asking if you have anything to say before somebody makes a motion to table.
oh, then I'm good then. If we're gonna table it, there's no use me going on even further.
come on, Joe, we want to hear something.
Guys, it was obviously a 3-3 vote, and then you came to me. So.
Joe's moving his chair out farther and down the ramp, and
You had 6 wants to table it, let's table it, then go ahead.
are you good?
I'm
with
serious, if
No,
you
are
got
you
6
good with
people
that?
wanna table it,
Are you good with that?
yeah, I'll table it. Well,
Okay.
do I have a choice?
Is there? Well, sure, you have a choice.
I don't have a choice.
I'll be honest with you, getting this lease passed with even a 3 to 4 vote, if we can have a rediscussion of this at the next meeting, I would rather we go forward and get a stronger consensus and make a better attempt at moving forward, so.
And yeah, and that's exactly what this board's supposed to be doing. So I applaud the board
God,
for
I'm
that.
impressing us.
Yeah.
We're impressing us.
Well, we are part of it.
We are impressing ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
I like the way we're doing this before the proverbial horse is out the barn.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
I like that. So.
Wanna be stable.
So, proper procedure to do this, do I just make a motion?
I think we just
Table.
make
I think-
a board member can make a motion to table.
I would make a motion to table this action item until, the future.
I
and-
will second that motion.
Okay. And just to make it clear, we will be going back to them on the term on the length of the lease is what we're going back on, asking for 3 years instead of 5.
Jim, is there a date that you're coming back to the board for it?
Yeah, we should have a date.
Can you set
Okay,
one?
I am going to say, what's our second April?
19th?
I'll get it.
10th, 24th, because the 10th is our
April,
It would
it's
be
10 and
April
24.
24th.
Oh,
But
I won't-
it will be, I'm going to say we're bringing it back by no later than the April 24th meeting.
That would
If we
be-
can get it for the 10th,
Good.
I think that would
great.
be right then.
okay? So that'll be part of the motion. Let's do a roll call on that. Kyle?
Aye.
Did we make a
Carl?
motion?
Aye.
Oh, did anybody second that motion?
I did.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
Uta did.
thought she did. Okay, Uda,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Jameson,
Aye.
and Joe?
Aye.
And I say aye also, that action item is tabled until the future. Thank you, guys, good discussion.
All right.
All right, with that, do you guys have any voice left to do reports?
No, public
We got
comment.
public
I'm
comments
sorry,
still.
I know, I'm looking ahead. I'm looking ahead. All right,
Joe's still fresh.
yeah, Joe's good to go.
Nobody gave me a chance.
Practicing his report the whole time.
All right, just let me make a note here.
You can buy the first round.
All right, next on the agenda, public comment, 3 minutes, and I see a hand, and thank you, Kathy, for moving so I can see you now. Come on up. Come on up.
Kathy Walker, 26051 Thorpe Court. You know, this was an interesting conversation. And I keep hearing that things weren't maintained and things were run down. And yet I know that 3 of the people here, which is 42% of the board, has been here for a while. So what happened? Why wasn't maintained? Why didn't people, why didn't somebody?
Because there takes a majority to do it, not an
So you're saying it
individual.
wasn't voted on?
I'm saying it wasn't even talked about. Formally.
Again, look how you talk tonight. But, it would have been nice to see, because I keep thinking, you're doing it now, and tonight was great. And, because those stables are, when you don't maintain something, I used to tell this to Tim all the time, it costs so much to do it, maintain. So anyways, great, you're doing it now, but it was kind of concerned, and why you didn't have a good negotiating. Now, I realize we have a new attorney, and it sounds like they're doing a pretty good job. So I look back at the past. We had many years of maybe not the service we needed. Let's leave it at that. Okay. And last week, I went to the police commission meeting because I wanted to know the numbers, because you know how I am. And when I found out that for sure they're not going to have 3 cars on the road every shift, and they're 12-hour shifts. So I have the third day, you got 2 cars, which tells me you're not going to meet that 3-minute response time. And I did ask about that, and I didn't get an answer to what the new response time should be. But by not having that 3-minute response time, that puts the residents at jeopardy, because this is why they had the 3-minute response time. So what I'm saying to you, and I'm urging you, is before something bad happens, find the money for the 12th guy or girl or whatever it is, but get that response time down to 3 minutes. We have a lot of old people here, a lot of ill people, and my God, look at all the things that have gone on with the weather recently, and people had to be helped, and a lot of people were in big need of help. The fire, my God, they went and saved that one house. It could have gone down. Thank God they were there. But you need this 12 per, and we spend money on a lot of things, and we've lost money on a lot of things. Find the money for that 12th guy before something bad happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, that's it for public comment. I saw you. Greg was getting all ready to get up. Barb, did you have something? Please come up.
Hi, I'm Barbara Pachuto, 27865 Johnson Road, and I'm talking about the electrical inspector retainer fee that's paid by the township. And I suggest raising the fee from $45 to $50 per inspection, or increase the permit fees, which puts the onus back on the builder or the homeowner and not the township to pay the inspector. And also, is there a retainer that is paid by the township for either the plumber or the heating and cooling inspectors? Thank you.
So.
Well, hang on.
Hang on a second.
I don't.
Thank you for those comments. Barb, I will get you an answer on that. I'm making my notes. I can't. Yeah, no. Yes, I'll get somebody up here and I can make my notes while you're talking. Bill, do you want to come up? Come on up.
I'd like you to listen too.
No, come on up.
Like Kathy, I'd like to share my compliments for the fact that you exchange with each other and try to come up with something that's constructive. I think it's wise that you pause and try to organize a response to the offer made by the Lutons. I'm hoping that they can understand us. But thinking further about it, somebody who talked about our hands are tied. I'm of the opinion you hold the key to the cuffs. A decision was made of what the public interest and joy would be way back when, but circumstances change. And the responsibility here is to foresee the future and adjust the changes and explain what is going on. Now, when change happens, somebody loses. It's not supposed to be a win-lose. You do the best you can, but nobody ever always likes it. Certainly Studebaker didn't enjoy going out of business. I mean, there are things that happen that make that go on. And I think that it's wise to keep that in mind. It's not a pleasant thought to have in mind, but it's a prudent one. I think that recreation does have situations where they have small groups of people and the money going out is greater than the money that is paid. The only thing I think of for a moment would be the ping pong. I happen to like it. I don't play very often, but the number of people there and the cost of putting it on, they might lose a little bit of money. But it's not like a horse. I mean, a horse is a whole different story. I've got a horse. I can attest to that. And so you have to keep the circumstance in mind and maybe compare ping pong with horses, is why I brought that up. The fact that you're looking that way, I think, serves this community well, and a thorough look of that, you understand me, would be a wise thing to do. But I commend you for what you did tonight. And I believe, as Kyle mentioned, if they can go month to month, they don't have to stop at the end of a month. They're interested in making it work, but they are smart enough to know that it has to be good for everybody. And so just continue to march. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Couple, is everyone else done?
Anybody else? No, Elena, you'll go last.
Yep.
Okay. If there's anyone else, Mr. Flavin.
Kevin Flavin, Park Lane. I've come to a lot of meetings, and for sure this meeting has shown me that there is a lot of horsing around. Sorry. And I think that I appreciate the concern about the amount of money that the horse farm fencing has cost, but that fencing that was there for years and years. I think that the rec department and the township subsidizes the marina. And I know that people pay for their boats, but I think there are only 59, 57 boats there. The golf course is probably subsidized by the rec department as well as the pool. And all of those areas, it would be a great idea to have a audit of the rec department to know how many people actually use the different things that are offered, whether that's day camp for children, whether that's horseback riding for children and adults, etc. You know, I went to a DDA meeting and a couple DDA meetings, and one of the things that the DDA, it appears that they are looking for are unique features of the island, and two of the unique features are the airport and the horse riding facilities. And I don't know that the community has looked at combining what happens on Macomb Street, not financially in a sense, but what happens and offering a package where you can go horseback riding and have a meal. I know that the airport says, fly in and get something to eat on Macomb Street. So with that in mind, I noticed that the DDA in their new website has, they're completing their, in the agenda packet. So what it would be nice to see is the information about, for instance, tonight's about the horseback riding or the horse farm, have that information provided within the packets for each individual either committee.
30 seconds.
The committees put that stuff in there for the committees and the people to look at, and put the budgets, what the estimated budget is for the capital improvements for all these different projects and or buildings and equipment. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Anyone else? Bob?
Bob Z. Blauvelt. First of all, my compliments to you people tonight. You had a great discussion. I think you made the right decision. You brought up some very, very good points. Some of the points pointed out that maybe that the farm has been mismanaged over the past, but that's said and done. But that doesn't mean that we have to pay for it now. Okay? We're moving forward. Carl, I want to publicly thank you for bringing up the 5-year plan. We have to understand a 5-year plan is nothing, it's a lot more than just a budget report. It's a lot more than just a wish list. It's an identification of goals and objectives, money in, money out, labor, benefits, maintenance. That is a 5-year plan. And if you had had that in front of you tonight, you could have answered a lot of your own questions. As far as worrying about the $23,000 that you're going to lose, which is your new proposal, your last one was, I think, $11,000 a month, you still have $60,000 cell tower money coming in. It's not an emergency, okay? In addition to that, this individual I don't think is going to leave overnight. He too has contracts with his customers. You're going to have to give him a grace period if he decides to go. It was a good discussion tonight. You people did the right thing. You brought up a lot of very, very good points. You have to stop the horse and buggy sometime and turn it around. You don't, just because it was going on and on and on and you had a contract before, doesn't mean that makes it right. You have to correct it, and I think that's what you attempted to do tonight. You people had some very, very good comments. Obviously, this needed a little more work before it came to this level, and I hope you can go back and put that program together. And I hope I see the same type of cooperation and common sense in the next meeting on this subject that I saw tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I knew it. Greg, how are you?
Good. Greg Carmazin, 21228 Eastern Road. I want to just, again, a lot was covered by previous comments. I support what Bob Zelasco and Kevin Flavin and Bill Heil and Kathy Walker, of course, have made. They've covered a lot of it, so I don't want to repeat all that. But I will say that this was really one of the best board meetings that I've seen in years, actually. I think there was a legitimate discussion here, a real exchange of positive views, pros and cons, and you came up with a very good solution to go back and look at this a little further and bring it back to the board. So I, too, share in the compliments of your work tonight. I do want to make a couple comments on topics that came up earlier. On the fees, the fee structure. Again, great thing that you're bringing this to the board to review, and I applaud the work that was done by the Community Development Director. I would say, though, that in the interest of educating the public and explaining what these changes are, this is the type of thing that I think would have been ideal for a study session. I think this would have been a good opportunity to, have a more in-depth conversation. It's hard to follow some of these numbers as they're being presented, at the podium. And I think if there had been some information that had been in the board packet that might have done a side-by-side, here's our existing fees, here's our new fees, and here's why, that kind of information would help to educate the public. And, if you do have a chance to go back and review this a little further, that might be good information for the institutional memory and record. On the Centennial Farm, I think that there was a good discussion on that. Obviously, there's perhaps this is the time to take another look at what the purpose of the farm is and whether or not the township can afford to have certain types of operations there. But I think the real key is you got to have an understanding of what your costs are long-term when you get into these kinds of activities. And, I think the board acknowledged tonight that perhaps things could have been done better in the past, but, we're at an inflection point now where you're the ones making the decision. And until you have the information on what these costs are going forward, I think it is a good time to take a look at doing a capital improvement plan. I applaud Trustee DeBose, bringing this up again and again. I also would follow up on the comments of Bob Zelasco. Having a 5-year plan worked exceptionally well for the police department, and we really need
30 seconds.
And we need to update that, by the way, for the police department, because also following up on Kathy Walker's comments, it's now very clear that we don't have the budget to provide 3 road patrols on both shifts. And that's a difference it's a reduction in the level of policing this community is going to have going forward if we don't restore that 3rd road patrol. So when you're thinking about the cost of all the things the township does, if we can't pay for a 3rd road patrol, but we're going to subsidize, a horse farm activity, that raises some real questions about priorities and what we can afford to do. And we also have now, raised the tax rate here to, I believe it's at a record high. So, it is a real time where you got to look at making some tough decisions and prioritization. So, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Okay.
Elena.
Are you ready? Okay. Okay. How many are there?
I think 3 for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll read the first one. This is from Marjorie Manning, 9252 Lake Road. There have been many complaints about priority waste lately. If people call them, they never get a response. I see them put my recycle and garbage in the same truck, and it has happened countless times. I understand if there is a heavy rain, the items cannot be recycled, but it happens on a sunny day. Either we are going to recycle or not. If so, the PW company needs to send out reminders of what can and cannot be put in recycle. So many folks have no idea they can't put grocery bags or pizza boxes in their bin. Please address this problem at the meeting. And then we have Cindy Mooring, Waterway Drive. I've seen what I hope are rumors about our police dispatchers being eliminated and our emergency services going through Brownstown Township. I hope these are only rumors and not something the board is considering. Thank you. Okay. Jenna Moxlow, 9415 Lakewood. Members of the board, as another trash day comes and goes, I'm seeing concerns pop up again surrounding the integrity of our recycling program on the island. For several years, I've brought comments and concerns directly to Priority Waste regarding recycling being thrown in directly with the trash. As someone who spends hours, and I mean hours, every week cleaning, recycling, breaking down boxes, and preparing our very large recycling bin, and as a taxpayer who pays for this additional service, when I see my recycling bin go straight into the trash truck, I'm more than a little frustrated. Each time this has happened, Priority Waste assures me that this is a one-off accident and it won't happen again. However, my doorbell camera footage says otherwise. Every few weeks, more and more citizens notice the same and take to social media to air their grievances. I always try to direct them to Priority Waste, but they get the same response that we do. I'd like to ask the board to open an investigation into the island's recycling services to ensure that our dollars are being spent in the way that they are supposed to, for our recycling to actually be recycled and not thrown straight into the trash, either immediately straight into the trash truck or a few miles down the road when both are potentially dumped on the same pile. I'd like to thank the board for listening to my concerns this evening. Jenna Moxlow. And that is it.
Recyclings and a central dispatch. Okay. Thank you. All right, with last chance back there. We're good? Okay, moving on to reports. Madam Clerk, if you have any voice left.
Well, I do. Well, a couple of things. Not much going on in the clerk's office right now, gearing up and resting up for the next election season, but we're still doing passports and, that kind of stuff. Anyway, Community Recreation Commission meets on the first Thursday right here at 6 p.m. And we've got a couple of things to announce going on. On April 1st, I just wanted to let you know, is Household Hazardous Waste, Wayne County Community College on Haggerty Road in Belleville from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's for all of your household hazardous waste items. On April 8th, the Rec Department is working on the Easter egg hunt at Centennial Farm. It's on Sunday, April 8th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and you can find more information on that on the website. Also, another item that the commission is dealing with and is trying to work with the community on is the community playscape. And so we are having a Recreation Commission Invitation Community Forum event, and it is scheduled for Saturday, April 29th at 10 a.m. All residents are welcome to join. We're going to discuss why the playscape was closed, funding opportunities, community questions and input, and ideas for a new playground. We also say if you were part of building the original playscape in 1991, we would love to acknowledge you and hear from you, your thoughts. There will be light refreshments, and obviously we'll be talking more about this as the time moves forward. Based on some of the comments made here tonight, you can be sure that while the commission is looking at the horse farm and Centennial Farm, which was a public facility that the public decided to buy for itself, we also have a public marina, a public pool, and a public golf course, all of which do not make a profit. But the community has decided that they would like to have these for themselves. Especially with the number of private clubs on the island, some of those may be prohibitive to average citizens. It's always nice to have a public option, but we'll be looking at those. We look at that every year. Can we sustain the pool one more year? How much is it worth it to you? How much is your water exercise worth to the senior programs, to, having your kids get swimming lessons? Granted, there's not 1,000 kids getting swimming lessons, but as a community, do you like having that possibility available to you instead of having to drive to Trenton or Lake Erie Metro Park or even Flat Rock Pool? So those are things that the commission always deals with. We do have numbers, by the way, on participation in all of our programs. I will ask Kim to start posting some of that information on our CRC website, but that's part of every year's budgeting process, is not only seeing who participated this year, but what do we forecast as what kind of participation will we have next year. And through that, we also learned that it's not just local people, it's also off-island people. So we have a lot of participation in our programs, and we can document that. Supervisor Budney pointed out about the commission attendance issue, and I am sad to say that sitting on the Fire Commission, we were unable to get a quorum in March. So we had no Fire Commission meetings in the month of March. It is for that reason that we also do not have a chairperson to put forward on the agenda tonight. The Rec Commission meets always on the first Thursday of the month. The Fire Commission meets here on the second Thursday of the month. A lot of times when there's no action items to be acted upon, there may not be a long meeting, but we do try to, have a regular meeting. We have a regular date, but that is certainly something that is going to be addressed as we move forward. So I just wanted to draw attention to that. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. The Treasurer's Office has finished compiling the tax roll data to balance our 2022 tax rolls, and that information has been delivered to Wayne County. As of today's date, we've collected 97.8% of the total 2022 tax roll, which I think is an increase of about 5% from last year's. All unpaid 2022 real property taxes must now be paid directly to Wayne County at waynecounty.com/PTA. And that's it from the Treasurer's Office. No report from DPS. Did not have a meeting in March. Our next meeting is April 11th. But the road project is continuing. We've completed the pre-bid conference with our engineers, and the bid opening for the road project will take place on March 30th at the clerk's office. From the airport manager and the airport commission, Commerce Park Airport Commission, we want to thank the board for their approval tonight on the Taxiway A reconstruction. And our next Commerce Park Airport Commission meeting will be on April 17th. That's a Monday at 6 o'clock. And on the construction, we're planning to have the construction on the taxiway begin as quickly after Island Fest as we can. We didn't want to have the construction going on at the same time as Island Fest, so it's being working with the contractors to make sure that start date is shortly after Island Fest. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, David. Jameson.
All right, good evening. I sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. The ZBA will meet tomorrow, and then, assuming there's business, again on the 25th of April. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission will meet on 20 April. And BPAC recently was able to work with the Township administration to get together sufficient grants to be able to start the Gibraltar Bay connector. So I drafted that legislation and submitted it, I think it was about 11 days ago. Derek said it would take a little time to get it on the agenda, so I was looking at April 10th. So, and that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I have the pleasure of sitting on Greenway's Open Space, which meets the first Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. in this room. We do have Dump the Junk again, set for Saturday, May 6th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Have more information on what is available and what can be disposed of and what can't be disposed of, except that hazardous disposal, as Clerk O'Connor has identified earlier tonight. I want to thank the entire Township Board for approving the purchase of the open space land now, Greenways, open space on Meridian. That's going to be a real benefit to the community, and I just want to thank everybody in this board for supporting it. And Jim, all kidding aside, thank you for your support with helping us come up with something that was a good, reasonable price, and it was a pleasure working with you and Bill Stevenson. I also want to say thank you for all the commissioners out there that have been reappointed tonight for all the work that they do. We have all sat on commissions, and they are, as Ted Van Os used to say, the backbone of the community, the township community, part of the community, because they're the ones that do a lot of the research and make recommendations. And again, without taking anything away from what we went through with the contract tonight, there was obviously a lot of hard work in that, and I respect the work that was done by everybody that was involved. It's not easy negotiating contracts, and particularly public contracts, and many, many times. So I want to say thank you to everybody that was involved with that. I also want to step back for a second, and we've had various people come to the microphone tonight and say how much they appreciate what this meeting was like when we discussed the Equestrian Center. But I think this community is really, really blessed by a number of things that have gone on for the last 30 days. And I look specifically at the Lenten Fish Fry. It's now a community event. When I talked with Terry McCarthy last week, he indicated 700 dinners were served. You're in there at 4 o'clock or you're waiting. And there was a long line out the door at 7:30 last time. A great community event. You're going to find people in there that you know, neighbors, friends, and it just is something that is really, really special. The same thing with Emily Schaller and the Rock CF. I had the pleasure of knowing Emily since she's been about 3 years old. She lived next door to us. She's now admitted on camera to being 41 years old and has been working with Rock CF for more than a decade. She has raised many thousands of dollars. If you saw her interview on Channel 4, you get a real feeling for what kind of community service and commitment Emily has, and she is a terrific treasure for this community. And also I look at something like the corned beef dinner that was served up at the Episcopal Church. Again, didn't have the 700 people there, but they had a great sense of community and a terrific place to live and work. friend of mine recently told me that their spouse was talking to someone who was looking at moving to Canton or to Novi, and the question was, why don't you come down to Grosse Ile and check it out? Too far. Nothing seems to be going on there. I love all of the special stuff we have going in Novi and that area, Northville. And I look around and I see, Kathy's not here right now, but the kayaking, I look at the open space, I look at the trails, I look at the fact that we have people coming in here every meeting that really do care about this community. I think that's terrific. I don't know of any other community that has the same sense of spirit. It's just a terrific place to live. I've lived here all of my life. I know many of you have lived here at a minimum for decades and decades. It's a terrific place. And it is because of the participation in community events and the participation of people coming here and giving us their thoughts that makes this such a special place. And I just want to thank the community and the people that come, and most particularly all the commissioners that are involved. And I also want to thank Elena Farmer tonight for stepping into some pretty big shoes, figuratively and literally. I think you did a great job, Elena, and you're welcome back anytime. That concludes my report. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Carl. Kyle.
Thank you. I sit on the Planning Commission. It meets this coming Monday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. I think I mentioned the last meeting, there will be a discussion of a special use permit for here in the airport area for I said doggy daycare last time, but you might know, Dave, what is it called? It's a
short-term dog kennel.
Kennel, yeah. So anyway, it's a possible service that I think could be good. The Planning Commission, I will not be there next week. I'm out for Easter, but I have full faith in the Planning Commission to vote the right way on that. I did ask that we try to put a placeholder on our following board meetings agenda, depending on what the Planning Commission does, just to help move that along. We just learned about our fee structure tonight, so they've invested fees in this, and so because they're doing that, I'd like to try to move things along if the Planning Commission supports it. I know that stresses or puts stress on our employees to get that done, but it just feels like a service that'd be great if we could do. So yeah, that's the Planning Commission. Just a brief discussion or a brief recap of tonight. I honestly, I don't like coming into these meetings with a vote that I know that I'd likely lose, and I thought that I'd likely lose the vote tonight, and I'm really grateful that the Township Board heard me on this one and voted to table it and at least consider that. So I will say that again, and yeah, so again, just very grateful to the Township Board, and I will leave it at that for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Joe.
Good evening. I sit on the Police Commission, and we meet the third Tuesday of each month, 7 o'clock in this room. And I wanted to let you know there's a meeting coming up, and it's on April 5th at 6:30 in the boardroom here. And it is about the consolidation of dispatch moving to Brownstown. I think it's a very important meeting for the people to see, and actually for the Township Board. I have not seen a presentation on this yet, and I'm looking very forward to it. And as some of you may know, may not, but when I was the police chief, we had a consolidation going on also for Downriver South. And I scrutinized that one, and I'm looking forward to all my questions getting answered from this one. So I think it's important that not only we see that at the board level, because the board's going to be making a decision, but that the people get involved in it too, because it's your police department, it's what you pay for. You pay your taxes, you voted on the millage which you want, that was part of it. So I think it's important that actually all of us see it, and gives you a chance not only to hear it, but also ask questions, get those questions answered, and then you can form your opinion, and we'll do the same with ours. So remember, that will be once again, that's April 5th at 6:30. That's correct, isn't it, Jim? All right, April 5th, 6:30 in this boardroom. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Joe. Derek isn't here today, and he didn't leave me anything to discuss. I hope he's enjoying his vacation. I did hear that wherever he is, there's sun. So he got a little sunburn.
Sun?
Sun? I don't know, but that's what he said, and he said sunburn. I don't understand that. Anyway, just a few things. Meridian Road Bridge has started, so Meridian Road no longer is a through road. It won't be probably for most of the rest of the year. They will be doing the bridge replacement first, and once the bridge replacement is done, then the paving from Parkway to Island, right past the West Shore Golf Club, Meridian will be repaved there. So it's going to take the better part of the year. The drive-arounds for that, if you're heading north on Meridian, you would go down Parkway to East River to Ferry, and up Ferry and catch Meridian again. If you're coming south on Meridian, you would go west on Ferry down to West River, and then back up either at Parkway or wherever you want to come up there. Also, we've had an ongoing DTE project that has Bellevue and Ruthmere blocked off. One of the problems was their equipment broke down, and they had to go out of the country to get replacement parts for it. That has been taken care of. I talked to them last Friday. They were in the midst of making sure that their pulling tunnel was clear, because once they start pulling, they can't stop. So if there's some impediment there, it really is going to goof them up. But so before they start pulling, they'll know they can pull it all the way through. We're hoping that the whole project is done certainly by mid-April. So hopefully not too much longer, and we can open those roads up again. I wanted to mention our DDA meeting, which is the fourth Thursday of every month. Macomb will be getting new benches and waste receptacles up and down Macomb. We just approved the bid to pour new pad footings for those benches and receptacles. So that's something that you will be seeing, all new benches along Macomb. And we also are going to be seeing 3 new murals on Macomb. One on the Groziel Hardware on the east side of their building, which is probably the most wide open space of any building on Macomb. So if you're turning off East River and going up Macomb, on that side of the Groziel Hardware, there will be a mural. On Zubke Plumbing's building, there will be another mural being put on there, and on Lloyd's, on the it would be on the Kroger side in the parking lot there, Lloyd's will have a mural. So that's all coming from DDA this year. And finally, I just want to reiterate what Joe mentioned. April 5th, which is a Wednesday, we will be having a closed session at 6 o'clock on on the TPOAM negotiations. So the central dispatch discussion will start at 6:30. It will be on TV. So if you can't make it, you can watch it. If you can't watch it that day, it'll be running. Chief Watson from Brownstown and Bob Heck from DCC, where pretty much this kind of originated from, the idea. It will be an informational meeting for the board. It has been somewhat difficult for us to get a concise picture of what's going on with this and why and where we're headed. Centralization from the state government and even somewhat from the federal government, because a lot of money comes into the state from the federal, is very much in favor of centralization. And that appears to be the way that things are headed. But we will be presented by Jeff and Bob the program. Unlike other study sessions, I am going to open it up for public comment or questions to them. I've talked to them, and they have been generous enough to say that they will entertain questions. We will have to, depending on the turnout here, there will be some limitations put on so everybody gets to speak, either ask a question or make their comment. I especially, if there are people who could be affected by this, the dispatchers, I especially want to hear from them. So that's why we're opening it up. I think it's a little bit different, and it deserves that. So if you can make it Wednesday, April 5th, 6:30 in this room. And that is all I have. So.
Motion to adjourn.
You want me to talk?
Yeah.
Second. He's got it.
Thank you, Joe, for those words. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody, for coming.